Hello, and welcome to Avian Specialty Inc.'s Part 1 of a two-part series on Aquarius Discharge Printing. First, let's talk about the artwork. Since discharge ink goes into the garment and replaces the dye with the pigment, there's no need for an underbase. A vector print is perfect for this, as you just use the art as if you're printing directly onto a light garment. For raster art, or halftone, you don't want to use what you normally use for a plastisol print. Again, there's no underbase. Simply separate like you're doing a direct to a light garment. But it's very important to limit the overlapping colors. So what I do is I'll select a color that's overlapping another and delete out any subsequent color underneath. When preparing the screens, it's very important to select an emulsion that's water resistant. It's best to give your emulsion supplier a call to find out what they offer. You can also research the web, other discharge printers, and see what they use. It's very important that you use the right emulsion or it could interact with the ink on press. In this instance, we're showing a autocoder. It's great for consistency. You can put your settings on exactly what you're doing, and you'll have the exact same type of stencil thickness and consistency you need for this type of printing. Obviously, you can manually coat if you stay consistent. I recommend a 2-2 or a 1-1-1-1. As long as you're ending up with the last stroke on the inside of the screen or the ink side, pushing the emulsion out to the t-shirt side or palette side of the screen. This will ensure that most of the emulsion will end up on the outside of the screen as you're pushing the emulsion through. As you watch the automatic coater, you'll see that the coating tray for the inside of the screen is actually second, thus pushing the emulsion out. This happens to be a 2-2 on this coating, but we have many customers using a 2-1, meaning 2 on the outside, 1 on the inside, resulting in an EOM of about 15 to 18%. The tighter the screen, the easier it is to put a consistent coat of emulsion. I recommend anywhere from, on the low side, 22 newtons, on the high side, 30, 35 newtons. And this is true whether you are printing plastisol or water base or silicone. The consistency of the tight screen and good stencil will give you better prints every time. So here we're showing how to rack the screen to dry. We have a drying cabinet. It's face down, t-shirt side down, so the emulsion will dry with more stencil on the bottom. Next we go to loading the artwork into the direct-to-screen unit. Obviously this is a bit of a luxury in most places, but it gives a really good consistent dark ink to create better imaging on the screen. Obviously if you don't have one of these machines, you can use your conventional imaging for your screens. At this point you grab the screen that is dry in the drying rack. For the direct-to-screen, you'll want to lock it in with 3 points to make sure you can use a registration system later on the press. This particular machine lays a nice thick black print directly to the screen, creating a better image once it's exposed. If you use your films in the same manner, you can also create some great stencils. On this particular unit, once the stencil is complete, it actually rides right into an exposure unit. Obviously with films you'll be using a exposure unit of your own. This is fine, just make sure you get the right exposure times for the mesh you're using. You can use the emulsion manufacturer's recommendations, or you can use an exposure calculator to figure out the times. For solid vector designs, we recommend 160 mesh throughout. And for raster or halftone designs, we recommend 230 mesh. Assuming you have your exposure right, you should be able to see a very easy washout of your stencil. Here we're showing one side, we're knocking out ink, and then we turn it around to kind of clear out the back of the screen, or the inside ink side. Once you've wet that down, you can go back to the outside of the screen using a pressure washer, but not very high pressure. Just use the tail end of the pressure washer. You should be able to wash out easily. I like to work around the image area slowly. Don't concentrate on one part too long. And as it starts falling out completely, start zeroing in on areas that may be left with a little residue of the emulsion. Just check against the light, and once you're sure you have a full, clean image, you can dry it out, use a squeegee, use a air hose, whatever it takes to get all the extra water out of the image itself. If you've done everything right, you shouldn't have any kind of emulsion residue in the water. Next, it's time to dry your screen. Either use a drying cabinet or a room with low humidity to get a fully dry screen before you go to press. At this point, you don't have to worry which way the screen goes. Everything's ready, and you just need a good dry screen. If you've been at a plastisol printer, you're probably not aware of post-exposing. This is important for water-based, as you want to make sure the emulsion is fully exposed. So with the image on it, you can either sit it out in the sun, you can run it back through your exposure unit, or on rainy days you may use a UV light to help expose the inside of the screen. Once the screen is fully exposed and post-exposed, it's time to tape up the edges. So you need to take great care with water-based screens, as the ink is a lot runnier than plastisol, and discharge and soft base is runnier than the high solids water base. We make sure we take great care in putting multiple pieces of tape to make sure we're not slipping through the edges. Water-based can run on tape, so we'll make sure we're getting a good coverage. It's also very important to concentrate on the corners, that you're creating a dam from the ink from falling out of the sides. Just close up on that. If you've got something like this, you'll be fine. It won't run through. Next, we want to block out any imagery that's not associated with the design or the registration marks. It's very important to block this in, because the ink can run and come through the tape. And as you can guess, discharge pinholes are very difficult to get out. So we hope you join us for Aquarius Discharge Part 2, where we'll cover subjects such as color matching, ink mixing, activation, setup, some tips and tricks on additives if needed, rotation, pressures, speeds, and of course cure. Thank you. See you next time.